Good morning, everyone, and thanks for joining us on MorningLine. Do you know what show this is? Yes, it's MorningLine. Do you know who I am? I'm Nick Barris, and I'm glad to be here live and direct for you on this 8 o'clock Wednesday morning. And we're going to talk about one of my favorite health subjects that we discuss at least a few times each year, and especially during this time of year, with some fantastic guests, and that's heart health. We're going to get into heart health and caring for that. It's something that's close to my heart, if you will, since I'm someone who, in general, likes to think he's in pretty good shape. And you look at me, oh, Nick, you look relatively fit, but I do have high cholesterol, and I do have a history of heart disease in my family, and I probably could eat better, and we all could maybe take a page out of that book. But there's a lot of things we can do these days about caring for your heart in general and health, and so we like to do this especially with Heart Awareness Month and all of that going on. So we're going to talk this morning with someone who's been coming on the show for a while, and I think he's just a terrific guest because he is so good at explaining things in a way even a dummy like me can understand. Dr. Joshua Beckman is joining us from Vanderbilt, vascular medicine there. He's the director. He knows heart health, and he's looking good on Zoom. Good morning to you, sir.
What a pleasure to be back again this year. Nick, I wish I could be in the same room as you. It's such an honor and privilege to be able to come on with you.
You are so very nice, and we'll get back together again sometime, but these Zoom calls work out great, and we can take phone calls this morning, 737-7587, if you want to join in the conversation. But Doc, I just want to kind of start with you. You know, you come on periodically, and we do like to talk in general terms about heart health. Have there been, over the last year or so since we've talked, any new guidelines? They're constantly changing the scope of what cholesterol should be, or what types of things you could eat, or what about blood pressure? Any new guidelines for folks that have come out really over the last year? Has it pretty much been stagnant?
No, we're always moving and doing new things. There's some guidelines that are particular to blood pressure and cholesterol, and those really haven't changed. Our goals still remain the same. You want to maintain a healthy diet with lots of colors in it. You want to get your bad cholesterol, the LDL, under 100 milligrams per deciliter. You want your blood pressure under 130 over 80. That's where you want your main numbers to be. And I think if I were to say one thing, I think it's really important these days to know your numbers. Sometimes it can be hard to get into medical care because of the other stuff that's going on. And so you really have to be in control so you can talk to your doctor and maybe even make some changes without coming in person.
Good advice. The basic stuff we've talked about. Remind us again, with regard to fatalities, heart disease ranks where in the scheme of things as compared to, say, cancer and other things that kill people?
Heart disease and stroke together, because they're part of the same process, are the #1 killers in the United States for men and for women. And I don't think it's well enough appreciated that women can suffer from heart disease and stroke just as much as men can.
And I know there's been special attention put on that for good reason. I wonder why that is. I mean, I know historically speaking, a lot of the science in medicine, because it was dominated by men, tend to focus on men, and that's been corrected to a degree. But what is it about women and heart disease that maybe has not been so upfront over the years?
Yeah, I think there's been a couple of different things that have happened. One, men used to be much bigger smokers than women. This is now decades ago. Two, men were the ones who were the primary workers in the family, and I'm going back a long time ago. And so there was a lot of men who were dying in their 50s and 60s. And so that's when a lot of attention was focused on this problem. But as we've gotten better at reducing these early deaths, actually women have caught up with more smoking compared to where they used to be. And so now, even though they had a bit of a built-in delay until menopause, women have caught up, and for them, it's the #1 cause of death as well. It marks both some improvement from where we were decades ago, but also some realization that women have a significant burden of heart disease too, and really need to be taken care of.
All right, and let's just remind folks again, specifically, and you're great at describing this. We talk about, we know it, and maybe I'm being silly to ask this, for anyone watching at home, heart disease is what? And what is technically hardening of the arteries? My understanding is heart disease is basically there's your heart pumping and the blood goes in, blood goes out. And when you eat like crap, your cholesterol builds up and eventually those veins get closed up. The blood can't make its way through. The heart doesn't have enough blood to pump anymore, so it shuts down and you pass out and maybe you get bypassed to save your life or maybe you die. Is that oversimplifying it?
Just a smidge.
Okay. Well, give me the definition beyond that of heart disease.
So the heart is, I think when everybody thinks about heart disease, they think about heart attacks. And I think that's a reasonable place to start, as that is an extraordinarily common way that the heart has a problem. But the heart also can develop heart failure, and there can be valve problems. So it's not just always a pump issue. It can be a valve problem where the valve gets narrowed or the valve leaks. Each of these things can come with chest pain or shortness of breath. And the one that we're talking about today, I think, mostly is the stuff that's within your control. And so it may be hard to control valve problems, but certainly you could do lots of things to avoid getting blocked blood vessels that'll cause a heart attack or other problems with the heart. That's, I think, where we can do the most work ourselves. Avoid smoking and do the things we talked about before.
If I choose not to take those precautionary steps, doctor, should I take solace in the fact that I know if my heart completely fails, I can now get a replacement heart from a bovine?
So I think that was a pretty incredible piece of news that's been done in a couple of people, but I think we're a long way away from suggesting that you can get a transplant from a pig on your farm to save you at the last minute.
Okay,
I would not bank on that.
And by the way, thank you for correcting me. It was not a cow heart, which is a bovine. There was a pig heart, wasn't it? And that's what I was referring to. My mistake. But there was a successful surgery, and I'm joshing a bit here, but I know that was an unusual step they took in a case where they really had no other option. And I think at least for a period of time, I don't know if the individual continued living or not, but for a period of time, the pig heart did extend this individual's life.
Yeah, this was not. I don't think this was someone who was walking and talking around and they tried the pig heart. I think this was someone who was otherwise terminal. This is really out there stuff, and I think it's an incredible opportunity for advance. But we are so far away from considering that to be even a reasonable opportunity that I would not bet on that as your option. I don't think anybody's goal should be, my heart is so bad, I need transplant.
I think that's great. And listen, with that, I don't want to get too far away from the main focus of what we'll talk about this morning, but with regard to transplant, so aside from that, we know over the years, we remember hearing about the Jarvik heart, and I mean, aside from pig transplants, are there other transplants that can be done, or is it still not very, very mainstream, certainly not at this point? I mean, artificial hearts or a transplant from one human to another if there is an organ donor, are those possible?
Yeah, so, I am lucky enough to work at Vanderbilt, where we are the #1 heart transplant center in the United States.
Okay.
If there's a place that knows how to do it, it's the folks who work at Vanderbilt. And I will tell you that the way that they're really making a difference, in addition to bringing heart transplant to lots of folks in the Tennessee area, is that they're expanding the population of hearts that are suitable for transplant. Previous ones that were not now can be treated and be acceptable as heart transplants. If there's a place where you need it, this is the place to get it. I would just beg, pray, plead, try and avoid needing that kind of therapy. It is not an easy road.
And that is truly, and I know they do happen quite frequently, that is the very last resort, meaning when you finally say, look, our only option is heart transplant or you're going to die.
That's right. And honestly, it's exchanging one kind of disease, heart failure, for another, which you require immune suppression drugs and puts you at greater risk for things like infection. And you really, this puts you in with the doctor really often to do some biopsies up front, make sure there's no rejection. It's really it's an arduous journey, and I would only recommend it if it was absolutely the last opportunity and a possibility to save your life and extend it.
Gotcha. Well, listen, we're going to take a break on that note, Doctor. When we come back, a lot of other points we'll talk about heart health, some of the real tangible things, as always, that people can do to avoid ever having to consider a heart transplant. And we'll take phone calls as well. If you have questions or comments about your cholesterol, blood pressure, supplements, dietary habits, 737-7587 is the number. We'll be back with Dr. Joshua Beckman and more right after this. Stay with us.